Here's the deck I was playing, Ice Lightning. It combines my two favourite cards from Opus 27, Seymour and Jar. I've done videos about both of those guys individually and how you can build decks around them, so I won't repeat myself too much. For Seymour, he can slot into any deck that uses ice. He pairs really well with the new lock, and Rufus and Shantotto complement that package as well. For Zaral, we need lots of Category 14 backups to make sure we have four Category 14 characters to give him haste. I'm also using the Eminate and Sid Waff because I think Sid is so crucial for any deck that can run him. The multi-element cards are just solid options, and I'm trying a small Scions package of Alisei and Estinian. Estinian can recur a Scion when he attacks, and Alisei can recur any forward, plus at damage 3, he's then able to recur a Scion as well as any forward. And the last card I went for was one Krista, who's another kind of discard. The one concern I had was that there isn't much interaction. Sephiroth acts like a summon because we can back attack him into play on our opponent's turn. I considered running some actual summons, but none of the options in Ice and Lightning seem like game changers. The game plan is to try to bully our opponent with Seymour and follow it up with continuous pressure from the other forwards. So it was hard to imagine a scenario where I'd want to cast a summon in response to something, rather than just waiting until my own turn to play another forward instead. If I was going to edit the list to include more summons, then Alisei and Estinian would be the things to cut. On to the games. I'm going second. My opponent's on Refia. My starting hand, it does include a Sid Waff, which is good, obviously, but the other cards are Sephiroth, Alisei, Estinian, and Al-Cid, and I don't really want to play any of them this early, so I reluctantly mulligan and hope that I can draw into something better. My mulligan includes another Sid Waff, so I'm in a very similar position, but I've also got a lock, so I'm tempted to play the lock and freeze that back up. I've drawn an Emperor though as well. So I've got a Sid, but she's got another target, which is the 1 CP Bard, or one of the forwards, of course. But I do have lock in hand already. So I've got a few different options here. So I'm definitely going to play a backup, and then it's just whether to play lock as well, and what to discard to do it. So Shantotto's an easy discard this early on. So I decided to go for lock, and we'll try and get the freezing in as early as possible, especially with this Refia deck that's a setup deck. And then we can play Emina to go search the 1 CP Bard. So next turn I can tap the Emina to play Bard and then also play the Sid Waff as well. And then we'll be on curve nicely. And then Lock, if he is still alive, that is, can then attack. And if they trigger an EX burst, Sid Waff's on the field, so they're not going to do it because I'd have to discard, which would trigger Lock. My opponent then decides to cast Brynhilda, so that's going to kill the lock and they can draw. That's quite annoying, but oh well, so be it. So tap one, play Bard, discard. I drew another Sidwaff, so discard him, play the Sidwaff to field. So enter with three backups, two in hand. At this point, I should probably apologise for the can of lager being in the shop. I didn't realise until the game had finished, but yeah, hopefully you can forgive that. At least my sponsors will be happy. In the meantime, my opponent has played the Cryo backup, which searches for a category 5 forward. So they've grabbed the Barts. So this is the Barts version of Refia where they can use the Time Magic special to go find other Warriors of Light and play them to the field, usually to set up their backups. And then they pitched to play the Barts as well. Back to me, and I draw Louis Suarez and Alphino. So Louis Suarez's other target is the forward Alisei. I'm just having a look because I can try to kill this Bart with a cloud, but do they have three Warriors of Light in the breakzone to protect him? And they do, so that's why I decided against it, and instead just play Louis Suarez to go search for this Alisei. And then I feel like I need to keep the pressure on. So I use the LSA to play Rufus and force them to discard. At this point, I realise about the can and think, oh, best chuck that out of the shop. Other types of lager are available. My opponents struggle with what to do. They're having a good think about it, but in the end, they decide to do a bot special and pay 3, and they go search for Refia. And then if they move to combat, Refia will just reactivate 1, and then they can use it to bottom deck my Rufus. If it was me, I would have waited and used Refia on my opponent's turn, but hey ho. And then I'll play LB Cloud and kill the Refia. Don't need a Luso because I've already got 4 backups, and I'm probably not going to use both Gilgameshes, so I can get rid of 1, keep my options open, and then pass back to them. I've still got a Zeral and a Yustola, is it? No, a Shantotto in hand, and a redundant Louisoix. They tap 2 and discard to play the 4-cost Luna, who do 5k to all forwards. I'm happy with that because they've basically had to overpay for a backup, and even if they'd have killed Cloud, I'm not too disappointed. And then they pass, they've got 3 in hand and they're tapped out. I've drawn a Shantotto and a Seymour, so perfect time to do Seymour. Tap 3, discard the useless Louisoix, redundant, should I say, Louisoix, and then I can pay 1, but I just pause in case there's a chance they have something on the stack to kill the Seymour that wouldn't give me the chance to pay 1. Unlikely, but just in case. And then choose discard and dual freeze the 2 most meaningful backups. Attack, and it hits an EX burst. They very hastily go, oh, look, an EX burst. I'll go search for a forward, and I remind them that Sid will make them randomly discard. So they decide against it, and there, in a nutshell, is the beauty of Sid. So pass back to them. They start with just the 1 fire backup untapped, 4 cards in hand. They have a think about using an LB, but decide they don't want to do that. And then basically just do nothing and pass back to me with 4 in hand. So I'm thinking, oh, maybe they have an Amaterasu then if they've got 1 fire CP up. I'm not really scared of it because Seymour is 9k, so he would survive anyway. I've drawn into a lock and a machinist, so I've already played the machinist and then play the lock. Turns out they didn't have an Amaterasu, or they would have used it on lock. However, the reveal is an Amaterasu, so that makes me think the draw must have been the army. Otherwise, it didn't make sense why they wouldn't have done it. I can go to combat attack and pay 1, keep those backups still frozen, force them to discard, which then triggers lock, freeze the other backup. And they take a damage, which isn't an EX, but even if it was, sits on field, so they would have to randomly discard, which would trigger lock again, and then I could try to freeze the bots. I pass back to them in a very commanding position, 5 backups, lock and Seymour on field. They're tapped out. They started with 3, they've gone up to 5, so even if they had, say, a Shantotto, it would cost them their entire hand. And I'm not too disappointed by that because I've got follow-ups. I can do Shantotto to get me back whoever, probably Seymour. You can see I've got Zeral and I've got an Alcid and, oh, 2 Shantottos. They cast Kusith and get back a Refia, and then they overpay for Refia. At least now, when they move to combat, Refia can reactivate all their backups, and then they use Refia's ability to bottom deck the Seymour. But being the gentleman that I am, I say to them, would you not rather just wait and do that on my turn? Because otherwise I could play another Seymour and still get the effect off. So we rewind that, and then I've drawn into a Sephiroth and a Krista. I've got Zerel in hand, so I want to use that to kill the Refia. So first I'm going to play Krista, force a discard, which will trigger lock, so then force them to use the Refia's Dual 4 ability, see which one they prefer. And I'm just saying, reminding them what lock does and what Seymour does. So it's a bit of Hobson's choice, really. They choose Seymour, but because they have to discard, it triggers lock. It was a summon, so I get to draw. And then I'm just deciding which card I'm going to pitch to play the Zeral. Leave the Ice CP open because I've got a Shantato and they're on no cards. The discard Sephiroth, play Zeral. Now I can swing and kill Refia. Damage 3 is an Amaterasu. Swing with lock, it's a Q-Sith, but they're not going to do that because they'd have to discard whatever they picked up and it would trigger lock. And then I can put them to damage 5. It's another EX. We're laughing about the fact that how valuable this Sid has been. And then I can pay 1 for Shantato and get back whoever I like. I get back the Y'shtola because she'll have haste in case somehow I need to push for damage next turn, but it's back to them. At least their backups are active, but they've only got the 3 colours, so they couldn't even do a Warrior of Light if they want, even if they wanted to, and they've only got 2 cards in hand. So there's not a lot they can do. They play Refia, and then yeah, just say I'm going to scoop. Fair enough. So that's game 1, and then we'll move on to game 2. This is my starting hand. I've got a Louis Suarez, 2 Louis Suarez, and a Ysayle, so this is a good keepable hand. The only thing is I don't have an ice card, but I'm going second this time, so chances are I'll draw into an ice card. So hopefully I can go Ysayle first, then turn to Louis Suarez into Alphinaud. They start with Lena back up and then pass back to me. So I've drawn my ice card and I can discard that and my second Louis Suarez to play the Ysayle, search for Seymour. Next turn I can do, as I said, Louis Suarez into Alphinaud. I've also drawn a machinist, so already I'm going to be set up for backups quite quickly, which is great. The only thing is we haven't yet seen the Sid Waff, and as we saw in the last game, Sid is really important against a heavy EX burst like Refia. My opponent is complaining again that they've not had a good start. Obviously, I can't see their hands, so I'm not sure whether this is true or not. But we'll assume it is. So if in doubt, they do tap 1, discard, play Leo and draw, but they've still got 6 cards now, so they need to do something else. But the thing they drew was a Cryo, so now they're a bit happier. They did have to overpay by 1, but that's okay. So play Cryo, search for Refia. But of course, Refia isn't category 5, so that's what I point out to them. So instead, they go back in the deck and find a box. Yeah, and then pass back to me. I've drawn my other Louis Suarez. So again, an easy discard, tap, discard Louis Suarez, play Louis Suarez, search for Alphinaud. And then I'm going to play Alphinaud to field. So just deciding which card to pitch. I've got 2 Zeral, so I can afford to use one of them. It never feels good discarding a Zeral though. Back to my opponent. And they move to combat and attack with Leo, but I'm being distracted by the people on the other table asking me questions about something, so I haven't noticed that he's attacked. He's like, "Oi, Leo, attack, take a damage." I'm like, "Oh, sorry, okay, yeah, we'll do." Damage is Santoto. I should have pointed out there's actually 0 EXs in this deck, so nothing for them to worry about. They had a loner on field anyway, so I wouldn't trigger it. And then again, they're moaning about lack of things to do with their hand. And I'm like, can you not just play Luna Freya? And then they look at the LB and say, there isn't a Luna Freya. They're using Hara's list from the World Championships 2 years ago, and it doesn't include Luna Freya. So they're not really sure what to do. So they just ask the person next to them, what would you do? It must suck big time because they actually just end their turn and discard for hand size, which is awful. So I really should have asked them to show the camera what their hand was, but there we are. So now I'm going to play Seymour and start this whole dual freezing and discarding chain again. Again, I just pause for a moment in case they want to do something before I pay the one, but they don't. So pay the one, dual freeze the two backups, make them discard, and then I can use the last active CP to play this one CP machinist. My hand is a Zeral and another Seymour, so if they do kill this one, I'm going to play the other one. And at some point, Zeral can come in to swing and kill a Refia, assuming they play one and they've not got 4 Warriors of Light ready to respond. They tap 2 and discard to play the Wall, who looks at the top 5 and has the win card, but it's a whiff, so things are really not going their way. They've got 3 cards in hand and they pass turn. I've drawn a Black Mage, which is funny because that could kill the Leo, because it reduces something by 4k. But I want to make my last backup the Sid Waff if I can, so that's why I'm a bit reluctant to play this Black Mage. Obviously, I'm going to attack and pay 1 to do Seymour's thing, but do I play this Black Mage first or not is the question, and that's why I'm hesitating for so long. And in the end, I decide I'd rather play the Zeral. It's a bit overkill to kill a Leo. I am risking EX burst by doing it this way, but I'd rather try and get the Sidwaff down if I can. So that's probably a misplay in all honesty because, yeah, they block with the Leo because they can see that Zaral's just going to attack and kill him. So I don't know if that was or wasn't the right play. They pay 4 to play that Lunith again, deals 5k to everything, but no follow-up. Back to me. I've drawn a Y'shtola and an Alizé. Still no Sidwaff though, which is frustrating. So dual freeze and make them discard. I've dodged another EX, which is good. They're on damage 2, so do I want to put them to damage 3? I decide they're not in that strong a position because they've basically got no cards, so I'm not as worried about pushing for damage at this stage because hopefully I can win before they get a chance to have a comeback. I've got the Y'shtola that has haste and 2 attackers on field, so there's 6 damage. I've also got Hestinian who has haste, so that could be the 7th. And that's why I think it's also fine to abandon the Sid idea and get down a 5th backup back to my opponent, and they start with 2 cards and 2 backups, but they just think it's not worth proceeding. There's no chance. So yeah, they concede again. So there you go, 2 victories in a row. Here's the deck list again. Thank you for watching. See you again.